So hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us on time. My name's Ruth Ferlin. I lead the Student and Community Engagements program at the Microsoft Africa Development Center. We're very, very honored to have Donovan Brown with us tonight. It's daytime where he is, but what I'm going to do is I will let Donovan talk about himself for about 20 minutes or so, and then he's going to go into talking about DevOps. Now, Donovan is our celebrity at Microsoft for DevOps. So you probably have seen him doing a lot of talks. And when I was in the US, I used to manage a bunch of enterprises, global enterprises. And every time I mention Donovan's name, they're like, oh, you know Donovan? Oh, can he come over and do a talk with us? So he is definitely our Microsoft celebrity in terms of DevOps. So we're very honored to have him here, especially for the Game of Learners participants that have recently learned about DevOps as a practice, as well as DevOps, Azure DevOps. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to you, Donovan. Take it away.
All right, cool. So thanks again for having me. It's always a pleasure to come and talk to the students and university people who are getting ready to start their journey into the industry. And I'm happy to answer any questions you have about what we're going to talk about. So as Ruth said, I'm going to share some fun facts about myself. I'm going to actually share a slide that I've never shared before, which will be interesting to see how that's received. And then after that, we'll transition into talking about DevOps and what it can mean for you in your career and in organizations that you might work in as well. So I was born in Germany, which a lot of people don't know, but I was educated in the United States. I have a degree in computer science. If I could do it all over again, because I have a minor in math, I'd probably get a minor in electrical engineering. So still computer science, but then engineering, with IoT being all the rage and Arduinos. And I'm actually going to show you a video of a project that I created that actually used an Arduino. And it would have been a lot easier had I had an electrical engineering background for me to have to figure out how to wire all that stuff together, which is kind of interesting. I'm also a certified Scrum Master. I'm a big, huge fan of Agile and Scrum as a methodology. And when you get really good at Agile, get really good at Scrum, it's a natural progression to start wanting to do some DevOps best practices like continuous integration, continuous delivery, infrastructure as code. So I think my background as a Scrum Master really helped me when I started moving over into the DevOps world as well. So I'm a big fan of that. I live in Houston, Texas, which is where I'm standing right now. And if you could see where I'm pointing that way is about 6 minutes is Compaq Computers, or what used to be Compaq Computers, which is where I started my career back in '96. It's now HP, but the buildings and the compound is still there, which is kind of cool and very nostalgic whenever I drive by there about all the good times I had in that particular building. Right now, I am a partner program manager at Microsoft. I started off as a senior technical sales professional. And one of the nice things about Microsoft is you don't have to stay in the role in which you were hired into the company. I was hired in sales. I then transitioned over to the product group as a PM. I then went over to the engineering and the advocacy org for 3 years and became a people manager. And now I'm in the Azure CTO office as a member of the incubations team, which is a cool team that gets to dream up what's next and push that out to our customers as products that we're going to ship from Microsoft. So some fun facts about myself: I played professional air hockey. At one point, I was ranked 11 in the world, and I've played in Russia. I've played all over the world, professional air hockey, and I played for a long time. I have a table here in my house, and there was a table for a long time at Microsoft's campus. For a year, I lived in Redmond, and when I went up there, I said, hey, I really need to be able to practice air hockey. Does Microsoft have a place on campus? Because my apartment was too small for me to put an air hockey table. And they said, sure. And one of my air hockey tables lived inside the Redmond Town Center, like the little, not Redmond Town Center, the hub that we have there, the commons area at Microsoft. And it was just on free play, so people could go and play anytime they wanted to. Then on the weekends, my wife and I would go up there and do some serious practicing to make sure that we stayed in tip-top shape. So there was a period that's there. Now I've donated to some friends of mine who went and picked it up so they could keep practicing. So one of the things I did, everything that I do, I find a way to bring software into it. And when I started playing air hockey, we started broadcasting the the matches all over the internet so that people could start to watch them. But it was kind of hard to watch because you didn't know what the score was. You didn't even know the names of the people that were playing. So what I did is I wrote this program that you can use an Xbox controller with, a wireless Xbox controller. And when you pull the triggers and press the buttons, it would score the event, and then the scores and everything would show up on the screen so that people who are watching over the internet, it looked like you were watching ESPN, because you would see all the action in real time, and all the referee was holding was an Xbox controller and able to control everything. So what I'm going to show you is a really short video, and you'll be able to see the different graphics that are on the screen. That's all put there by a person using an Xbox controller, an Arduino on the table, and all this wireless communication over Bluetooth, making all this cool stuff happen. And you'll get to see what 2 professional air hockey players look like when they start to play. So here's a video for that. And if you'll notice, in the upper left-hand corner, it has like Danny Hines and Mark Nizzi with 1 and 2. Those are the scores of the game that we're watching right now. Down at the bottom in the center, it says Danny Hines just scored. So again, when you're watching this on the line, you get this really rich experience, and you know exactly what's going on. And I wrote all the software that does all that stuff to make that work. Again, electrical engineering would have made my life a lot easier because I would have figured out how to use the Arduino with a lot less effort. So air hockey is one of the things that I really like to do and still play. I also race cars for fun. I have a 97 BMW M3 that is completely gutted, race suspension, race brakes, and I autocross on the weekends. Haven't done it much since COVID, but I'm looking forward. I get my second shot on Friday, and then I'm going to feel safe to go back out there and start playing with some of the toys that I have here. Like all things, I created a video for the last thing. I'm going to share a really quick video of me racing my car. I have a co-driver who's sort of like my mechanic almost. He's really, really good with vehicles, and he's been able to help me modify my car. And in this video, it's just he and I going back and forth at the track one day. So hopefully you'll enjoy this video too, seeing what it looks like to autocross. This isn't wheel-to-wheel racing. This is we race against a clock. But this is another thing that I do for fun. Every time I watch that video, I remember I need to go back and race because I haven't raced in, man, well over a year since because of COVID. One other thing that I'll share with you, which I don't share very often, but I don't just race cars, I also collect cars, right? So that BMW that you saw me racing there is just one of 8 that I have. I really, really, really like BMW. And I bought the house that I live in right now specifically because it had a 4-car garage, so I could shove cars in there. And then I had a lift installed so I could shove more cars in there. And my wife and I are now looking for another house simply so we can have a bigger garage, because if I had more space, I'd have more cars than I have right now. But this is just something that is just a dream of mine, to be able to do things like this. And software has enabled this. It's a funny story. I wasn't always the best student, to be very transparent, and I would really have to motivate myself to study and really work hard. So what I would do is I would take a drive through this neighborhood that was near where I lived. This neighborhood just had these beautiful homes in them. They were really nice. It's like, man, go back and study, because one day you're going to want to live in one of these houses. And that's what I did to motivate myself. Well, the house that I'm standing in right now is actually in that neighborhood, right? So it's just amazing. If you can see it and if you drive towards it and it's your passion, you can make it happen. And it was really surreal for me to realize that I'm actually living in the neighborhood that I used to drive through to motivate me to make sure that I did well in school, which is a lot of fun. So those are some fun facts about me that you might not have known. Most people know me because I'm a public speaker for Microsoft. As Ruth said, I get sent all over the world. It can be a very glamorous job. I've spoken on every continent except one. I have spoken to crowds as large as 23,000 people, which is extremely exciting. I've spoken in the MGM Grand in Las Vegas. So the same places you go and see boxing matches or your favorite concert, I've had the privilege to have that same experience of standing on a stage and looking up and seeing people everywhere that you look to talk about something that I'm passionate about. And I've been very fortunate. Like I said, I've been able to travel all across the world speaking to people who like the type of things that I like and to geek out with them. And sometimes it doesn't dawn on you that it's your job. Like you're literally getting paid to do this for a living and you're only on stage for an hour. And they flew you all the way across the world so that you could go get on stage for an hour. And then you get to experience amazing places around the world. And as I've had a video for everything else, I have a video for this too, which gives you an idea of the experience that I've had when it comes to speaking for Microsoft.
Please welcome Donovan Brown.
Donovan Brown's come back down from our US headquarters.
Ladies and gentlemen, he's back. Please welcome again on stage, Donovan Brown.
Please welcome Donovan Brown.
Now what I'd like to do is invite Donovan Brown to come up.
What I'd like to do is invite Donovan on stage to show it off.
It is such an exciting time for DevOps. DevOps is the union of people, process, and products to enable continuous delivery of value to our end users. Good morning, everyone. No, let's try that again. Good morning, everyone. No, let's try that again. Good morning, everyone. No, let's try that again. Good morning, everyone. Oh, perfect. You have no idea how excited I am to be here to show you the cool stuff that we've done with continuous integration and continuous deployment. I am so happy to be here and share with you 23,000 of my closest friends. I am so excited because DevOps, if you don't know me, is what I do. What I'm going to do now, and I know some of you are waiting for me to do this, I'm just going to rub a little DevOps on it and make it better.
That just gives you an idea of what an exciting life it can be if you like to speak in public. And a company like Microsoft will give you the opportunity to do that no matter what your role is. Don't think because I'm a seller, I can't go speak at conferences, or because I'm an engineer, I'm not allowed to go speak at conferences. If you cultivate and exercise and build that muscle and build that skill as a very clear presenter, being able to communicate complicated things in a very clear way. I don't care what your title is at Microsoft, you're going to be able to represent a company like Microsoft on the biggest stages that they have, which is an extreme honor for me and something that I take extremely seriously. And in doing so, it has propelled me throughout my career. I've only been at Microsoft for 7 years, and I've gone from a entry-level, senior-level person to a partner, which is getting close to the top of where you can go inside of Microsoft. And it's been an amazing ride. So it's an amazing place to work. My career, I actually started off as a biology major. I was pretty confident I wanted to be a cardiac surgeon. I saw an open heart surgery on television once and could not turn it off. I started studying biology, went and started doing research at Methodist Hospital where Dr. DeBakey worked, who was the first person to ever do a heart transplant. And I was able to see open heart surgery in real life as often as I wanted to. The doctors there found out that I really enjoyed working with computers as well and asked me to computerize their filing system. So instead of having paper files, I used Paradox back then, and I wrote them a database application that would allow them to search for patients and store all the relevant information inside of a database. I think it was 11:30 at night one night. I'm sitting in Methodist Hospital playing with this computer, and it dawned on me, I'd rather be playing with this computer than what I'm supposed to be doing here in this hospital. Changed my major from biology to computer science, went down the street to Compact Computers and got a job as a technical writer because I was a self-taught programmer, but they weren't going to hire me at Compact as a software engineer with no experience and no degree as a biology major. But what I had been doing during that time is I used to go home and type up my notes. And then the next day I would sell my notes to my peers and my students in my class. And I could clearly take in information and then crystallize that information so that everyone else could understand it. And when I showed that to Compact, they hired me as a technical writer. Well, when into Compact, I didn't want to be a technical writer. I wanted to write software. So every day I bugged my manager to let me write software and prove that I could write software. And she was just annoyed with me. And one day she said, fine, Donovan, go take this application and modify it. I need it to do this instead of what it's doing today. I was so excited, ran to my desk. Within an hour, I'm back. I'm like, here you go. Give me something else to write. And I did this every day for about 6 months. And eventually she went to her manager and said, I am so sick of this kid coming to me and asking me to write software. Give me something he cannot write in a day. So they asked me to write a fiber channel exerciser, which had never existed before because at Compact at that time, we were creating the very first fiber channel board. And this was long before Google, right? This is like news groups, and it took forever to get answers, and you had to figure it out on your own. 6 months goes by, and I realized that all I've been doing 8 hours a day is writing software. And I went to my manager and said, I'm clearly not a technical writer anymore. What can we do about getting my title changed? And she went to bat for me. And I got promoted from a technical writer to a Systems 1 software engineer at Compaq Computers at a time where Compaq was the largest computer company on the planet. So to have that on my resume, even before I graduated from college, was a huge opportunity for me. At which point I left Compaq because it was around the .NET bubble, and I ran around all the companies that I possibly could, playing Pac-Man, trying to collect as much money as I could while I knew the getting was good. What was really interesting about that period of time is I learned a lot of different software languages. I learned a lot of different processes like Agile and Scrum, Kanban, evolutionary prototyping, RUP, waterfall, all of them, which then led to my second stage of my career where I was a process consultant. Having written that much software and those different languages and those different processes made me very valuable to companies who wanted to go into organizations and help them come from the waterfall world into the Agile world. I did that for about 7 years, 6 or 7 years, at which point I then got brought into Microsoft to sell the product that I had been consulting on for the last 7 years. And then after that, I joined Microsoft in December. By March of the next year, so within 4 months, I was on stage for the very first time presenting a product called Release Management. And that went so well, that's where my entire career took a different turn. They sent me to Europe in Barcelona right after that to go speak on the same product at another conference. And then I got seen by the product group on that product and said, we need you to come and make the product as good as you make it look on stage. And then I became a PM, then the advocacy, and now here I am as a program manager, a partner program manager on the incubations team, which is really exciting as well. So all I would tell you to do is find something that you're passionate about and go do that. If it's software, fantastic. It can be an amazing career if you're weird like us, because software developers are kind of weird. We like playing with zeros and ones versus talking to people. We like figuring out how to make that computer do what we want to make it do. But it's not for everyone, and it's okay if it's not for you. But go find your passion, because I'm a firm believer that if you're the best at what you do, someone's going to be happy to pay you to do it. I don't care if it's writing software or not. So please find your passion, because it doesn't even feel like work. I feel like I play all day, and there are days I have to pinch myself and say, did I work today? Because all I've been doing is playing with software or figuring out this new library or going and recording a video for YouTube about something that I'm passionate about. And then my boss is happy, and it's just weird to me that that's actually my job. So find something you're passionate about and don't let go of it and make it your job. So what I want to do now, Ruth, is do you want me to go ahead and just jump right over into the DevOps stuff, or do you want me to stop now and let them ask questions, or do you just want to hold the questions till the end?
I'd like to stop now and have others either post their questions on the chat window or just unmute yourself. So this is not a Teams live, so you can unmute yourself and ask your question or put it on the chat window. So we're going to take a pause and see what comes in.
Sure. And then after that, we'll just transition over into what is DevOps, and we'll talk about that for a few slides and give you some more resources near the end that were very helpful for me on my journey, and then obviously open it up for more questions at the end as well. And I can't see the chat, Ruth, so if someone types in something, I'll need you to relay that to me.
Yeah, we're looking at it right now, and there's nothing at the moment, but I'm gonna bring in Julia. Hey, Julia, is there anyone on your end asking for anything or asking questions?
Okay, hi Ruth. So from my end, I still have no questions, but I think I can ask one.
Sure.
So during your journey, what was like the worst experience you've ever had during a presentation?
Worst experience during a presentation. It's the scenario where the demo doesn't go quite right. I think the one that it seems so insignificant, but I think it was build 2018, maybe 2019, where literally I just wanted to drag a tile on a Kanban board from one lane to another. And I had rehearsed so much and it had worked every single time that when it didn't work on stage, it was like really, and what was funny is that to me, it was just devastating. It was completely wrecked the entire demo. I was so upset. I was almost unconsolable off stage. I was so upset, but no one noticed, right? I think I made a joke about it. Like, oh yeah, probably best that I'm not allowed to do that since I'm no longer on the team. Or I made some little quip about that not working. And to me, that was just like ruined the whole demo, and people loved it and they thought it was great and they thought it was funny. So it's kind of funny how what I thought was the worst thing that's ever happened to me on stage was perceived by others differently. And I've learned that moment I need to stop being so crazy hard on myself and think that, because we're all, as a presenter, you're all striving for that perfect demo where the timing is right, the jokes all land, people laugh when they're supposed to, every demo works exactly like you practice it. Because when you practice a demo as much as I do, and I'm talking hundreds of times, that's not an exaggeration. I have done that demo hundreds of times, and every time it worked. And for you to be, finally, the lights are bright, they're on you, everyone's looking at you, and that's the time it chooses not to work. Oh man, I was so upset. But when you're on stage, you can't show that. You just kind of got to roll through it. And because I had rehearsed it so often, I was able to kind of make a joke about it and move on. But I think that's probably the worst. And the other one that was interesting was my wife loves this one because she actually happened to be watching me do this, where I was doing a demonstration and the demo would not work. And I told the whole crowd how easy this was to get to work, and it would not work. And I'm troubleshooting it right there on stage. And what was so amazing about that is that the crowd wants you to win, right? No one in that crowd wants your demo to fail. They all want your demo to work. And while I'm sitting up there struggling with this demo, I even made the joke. I was like, listen, if it doesn't work this time, we're all getting up and going to someone else's session because this isn't going to work. Again, kind of bring down the tension in the room, break it with a joke. And then next thing I know, it worked. And everyone was like, oh man, that was awesome. I can't believe you got it to work. And then the demo went on. So that rehearsing and understanding the demo to the point to where you can actually troubleshoot it on stage, I think is really important. And you try to minimize or reduce those horrible moments because you've practiced so much that they just don't happen very often. But luckily for me, I've never had a demo completely not work on stage. I've always been able to either make it work or teach them why it didn't work right there on the spot and turn it into a learning experience. That's a great question. Okay, Ruth, are there any more? Or do you want me to go ahead and continue?
There are more, but I'm going to hand it over to Julia. So Julia is actually our student ambassador that was putting this together for everyone. So I'm going to hand it over to Julia to moderate the questions. Julia, okay. Take it away.
All right, thank you, Ruth. So we have a question from Nicholas. He's asking, who was or is your mentor?
My mentor?
Yep.
Oh, there's several. The first one that pops into my mind is John Montgomery, who was a person who I've gone through several times at Microsoft, who I go to and say, hey, this is what I'm thinking about in my next career move. He's the reason I became a manager, which is really important. Charlotte Giacone, who was my previous CVP. There's not just one person that I would say has helped me throughout my career. And what you want to do is you want to build that network of people, not just that one person that you're going to constantly lean on. I remember Scott Hanselman, before I even knew who he was, reached out to me and gave me some really good career advice on when you want to think about getting promoted, go find where you are in your career ladder, look at the description of the career ladder, the step right above you, and go start doing all those things. Because when you start to do those things, then you can go and have a very impactful conversation with your current manager saying, hey, I'm clearly already performing at the next level. What is it going to take to get me promoted? Because you should be promoted when you prove that you can do the next level, not we're going to promote you and fingers crossed you can do it at the next level. If you can prove that I can already perform at the next level, it's a no-brainer to go ahead and promote you. And there's been several people that have come into my life at certain times who have given me that push or given me that encouragement or opened a door for me or made an introduction for me throughout my career at Microsoft. So from my very first manager and skip level manager when I joined the company to my current skip level manager and manager that I have today. So I lean on a lot of people at Microsoft, and then I try to play it forward. I just had someone reach out to me yesterday who was new to Microsoft, who had never met me, but wanted to ask me a question about how they could go and progress in their career. And I was happily willing to speak to them as well. So I don't know that I could say there's one person, but there's been a collection of people at Microsoft that have helped me during my career.
Okay, that's amazing. So I see you have a couple more questions, but I can
Sure.
ask the final one before you dive into DevOps. So
Okay.
you have Mike asking, please describe your self-teaching process. So he's asking you to describe your self-teaching process.
Hold on, I'm going to turn this up real quick, so I'm not sure. Describe myself how?
Describe your self-teaching process.
Oh, teaching process.
Yeah.
I think I'll turn that around. Like, I think if they're asking how do I teach myself something?
Yeah, I think that's what he meant.
All right, right. So the way that I go about learning something is I break it down to the barest minimum. There's a video on my YouTube channel that talks about this. So if you're curious of how I teach myself something, go find the video on my YouTube channel on Helm, because Helm is a product that you use to deploy things out into Kubernetes. I've used it several times, and that's the only way I could describe it. I didn't know the product, but I could use the product. And one day I needed to use it again, and I was so frustrated because I didn't use it often enough to truly remember how everything worked. And I was so frustrated, I said, that's it. I'm going to stop using Helm, and I'm finally going to learn Helm instead. And so what I did is I actually started with an empty folder. And I added file by file, character by character, till I understood what everything did in a Helm chart. And now I teach what Helm charts are, and I have videos on it. And I've done several presentations on Helm charts. And that's what you really want to do, is you want to take it from I can use this product to I can teach other people how to use this product. And the amount of depth of knowledge that you have to feel confident in teaching someone is drastically different than the amount of knowledge you need just to be able to effectively use a particular product. And one way that you can actually exercise that is when you're starting to learn a new project or a new product or a new API or a new language, bring up PowerPoint at the exact same time. And what I do is I'm saying to myself, okay, what did I just learn? And then how would I represent that in a PowerPoint that I would then present to someone else? I did the exact same thing with objectives and key results. There was a time where my teams were new with objectives and key results. We were trying to figure that stuff out. So as I went through YouTube channels, as I read blog posts, as I read documents and books, I would then document my learning path and what I had just learned as a PowerPoint. I had no intentions of ever presenting this PowerPoint. It was just a way for me to collect my thoughts and make sure I understood different concepts. In the notes, I had links to videos and blog posts and PDFs. Oddly enough, I ended up presenting that several times because I ended up becoming an expert in objectives and key results, going through this learning path. And then I had the exact PowerPoint I needed already to go and present to others on what objectives and key results are. So one thing I would say is really try to learn it to the point that you could teach someone else. And a good exercise to do is to build a PowerPoint that you might present in the future, or you may never present, that captures your knowledge in a way that you could then share it with others.
Wow, that sounds good. So to everyone who's asking the questions on the chat, I promise we'll get back to them after the presentation on DevOps. So I'm sure you have a lot of people eager to learn on DevOps. So I will leave it to you, Donovan, to continue on the same.
Perfect. All right, so let's quickly talk about what is DevOps. And this was a question I was asked at Microsoft. When I switched from the field team, which is a selling team, to the product team to go define DevOps for Microsoft, I was clearly asked this question. I didn't just go off and Google with Bing someone else's answer on what is DevOps. I was like, no, Donovan, you've been in the career for 20 years at that point. Why was DevOps not even a word 20 years ago? What has changed in our industry? What has made this something that we're talking about? And I really reflected over my own career on what do I believe DevOps really is today. And after I thought about it, and this took me 30 days. In 30 days, I wrote one sentence in 30 days. And the sentence that I wrote is this one, that DevOps is the union of people, process, and products to enable continuous delivery of value to our end users. The most important word there is value. It's not about software. It's not about features. It's not about uptime. It's about value. Because even if you have 100% uptime on your infrastructure, but you're not delivering the correct features, you're not delivering value. If your app has all the greatest features in the world, but it's never up and it's not reliable, you're still not delivering value. It's not about software. It's not about uptime. It's not about SLOs and SLIs. It's about value. And you have to be able to deliver that on a continuous basis. Because now we're in the world where everything's on our mobile phone. And if the app that I'm using doesn't do what I want, I'll uninstall it, give it a 1-star rating, and go download someone else for free who wants to do the exact same thing. So you have to constantly be innovating. Value is the most important word of that particular sentence. And I also said end users because not all software is used by customers. Sometimes your customer is an internal back office team inside of the same organization, but they have to be able to see the value in what it is that you're actually delivering. It takes three parts to do this. It takes people, it takes process, and it takes products. Products are the easy part. Most of us at Microsoft and our competitors give the products away for free. That's not really the important thing. But so unfortunate, though, is that's where people focus on. Oh, we got to go get the best CI system. We got to go get the best CD system. We got to go get the best infrastructure as code tooling. Like, really, what you need to be focusing on is using the tools as a way to leverage and to propel your process and your people. You shouldn't have any religious debates on if I should be using Circle CI or using AppVeyor or using Azure DevOps or GitHub Actions. Like, that should not be a debate you guys are having as a team. What you should be focusing on is we need continuous integration. Let's go find one that does the job and let's move forward. Oh, but it's not best in class. That's funny because the features that make it best in class aren't features we need. So let's not sit here and waste time debating on which CI system we need and then not have one. Because while you're debating, you're not doing continuous integration. While you're debating, you're not doing continuous deployment. You need to start doing these things, and then you're free to change the tools as you need to. So please don't get bogged down in the products. They're important, but they're not the most important. The process is to guide your people through this journey of DevOps, this transformation that you're on. You can use Kanban, you can use Scrum, Agile, whatever it is that you want to be able to help your people drive towards a common goal. But your people are the most important, and your people are the most difficult, because people who have been doing the exact same thing for a really long time want to keep doing it the exact same way. It's comfortable, it's familiar. I know how to do this, I'm really good at it. Why would I change? And if you've been successful as an organization doing it the way that you've been doing it for 30 years, you have even less incentive to change because we're number one, we're the biggest in the world. Why would we change the way that we've been doing? If it's not broken, don't fix it. Well, just because it's not broken doesn't mean it can't be improved. And unfortunately, for a lot of old incumbent companies, the small startups are coming to eat their lunch. And they were born in the cloud. They use Agile and DevOps best practices right out of the gate. And they're accelerating faster. Yeah, at the top speed, maybe the incumbent is moving faster. But the acceleration of the startup, the acceleration of that newcomer, that acceleration of the born in the cloud organization is going to surpass them at a point to where they'll never be able to catch up unless their people understand that DevOps is not an option. DevOps is not a nice to have. You either implement DevOps or you lose to the companies that do. It is that simple. But your people have to get it because there's no products and process in the world that are going to overcome people who refuse to change. Now, there's some habits we learned inside of Microsoft because inside of Microsoft, we're the largest software company in the world. We are at a lot of software and we've done it really well. We've done it really poorly, but we've learned a lot. And what I'm talking about right now are some of the habits that we learned on the Azure DevOps team. I don't want you to think that every team inside of Microsoft, like the Office team, the Windows team, the Xbox team, the Bing team, we're all at different stages throughout our own DevOps journey, but we're all going through this process. So I just don't want you to take what I'm saying now as factual for every team inside of Microsoft. That's not the case. But some of the things that we learned that were really important to us to start to embrace this DevOps transformation was being customer obsessed. It's not about what's easy for the developer to write. It's about what's best for the customer, even if it's hard for the developer to write. Those are the challenges and the problems I want to solve as an engineer are the hard ones that make it really easy for my users to start to use our software. And it made it really easy for us on the Azure DevOps team to obsess over our customers because we were our own first customer. We were actually using the product that we were building. The Azure DevOps team uses Azure DevOps to build Azure DevOps, right? So we are our own first customer, and we obsessed over making our lives really easy, which was behooved and was really good for our customers because our customers then were like, hey, this is really great to use. Like, yeah, we know because we had to use it for weeks before you got to see it to make sure that we could do our job with it as well. So being customer obsessed, I think, is really important. And it stops you from taking shortcuts. You need to be able to empathize with your customers, put yourself in your customer's shoes, and make sure you understand that using your product isn't frustrating and error prone. Another thing we wanted to do is make sure that our teams felt that they were aligned as a unit, but had the autonomy to go and do things that were specific about their particular feature. We were on 3-week sprints inside of the Microsoft Azure DevOps team, and that's the alignment. Every 3 weeks, we're going to ship and you better be ready. Now, if you want to use that 3 weeks as 3 one-week sprints, by all means, go for it. If you want to use that 3 weeks as just a Kanban series of pulling work towards your engineers and pushing it out the door, that's fine. If you want to run 1 3-week sprint, it's completely up to you. But when it gets time to ship, you better be ready. So you have the autonomy to do paired programming, test-driven development, whatever type of things you want for your team that builds the culture of your team. But we align you by making sure that everyone is ready to ship every 3 weeks. So we call it aligned autonomy, which is kind of a neat way of saying you have freedom and we want you to go succeed, but you got to play nice with everyone else on the team and in the organization. Another thing that we started to realize is that we had to think about production first. A lot of organizations, a lot of teams will write software in kind of cocoon or this bubble where they're all worried about the features, they're worried about getting it perfect, and they haven't even considered how they're going to ship it. Then all of a sudden they get feature complete, they're ready to ship it, and they turn around and they realize they have a whole nother mountain to climb because they have no idea how they're going to deploy it. And as they start to try to deploy it, they realize, man, if I would have known that these things were the case trying to deploy our software, I might have architected this different. I would have made different design decisions knowing that this is the mountain we were going to have to climb after we wrote the software. But if you were thinking about production at time zero, those decisions, those criteria, those constraints could have been applied to your design so that you design something that would easily be deployed into production. With a lot of the tooling that we have today, you can actually build your pipelines to production before you have a single line of code. I know I'm writing .NET code, so I'm going to do a .NET restore, .NET build, and a .NET package. I know that before I write a single line of code. I know that I'm then going to take that zip file and I'm going to deploy my infrastructure, which might be an app service, and then I'm going to use a task that's going to upload that zip file to the app service in my dev environment. I'm then going to run some integration tests. I'm going to get some approvals, and I'm going to rinse and repeat this till I get into production. I can actually build that pipeline today without any code written by any of my engineers. With that pipeline all the way into production, what I can then do is tell my team, this is the first feature I want you to go implement. And as they're committing code to the repository, our pipeline is being exercised into production every single commit. It goes and it compiles it, it tests it, it tries to deploy it. Maybe the deploy succeeds, maybe it fails. If it fails, we go off and we troubleshoot why the deployment failed. But what we're doing is we're working our software and our pipeline as one unit. I think it was Aaron Bjork who said, we treated our pipeline like a feature of our product. Because the faster that pipeline is, the more fluid that pipeline is, the faster we can ship features to our customers, right? So it was really important to focus on treating your pipeline not as an afterthought, but as a design decision on how you're going to ship your software. And that's thinking about production first, which is really important. Shifting left was also another concept that a lot of people are starting to use where we're trying to stop passing the buck downstream. We want quality to be shifted left so that the engineers that are designing your software or designing security and designing quality into the product, not bolting it on after. When I was younger and I was writing software for Compaq, I didn't write a lot of unit tests. I didn't worry about security. I would just get the feature to work. I would throw it over the wall to the QA team, and then they would go beat on it and try to find the bugs. And then I would go back in and I would bolt on quality, as I would say, because I'm just closing bugs. But I wasn't thinking about the quality going in. And if they, as the QA team, didn't think about it or missed a test case, that's a bug that's about to escape into production. Then they would hand it over to the security team that would do a security audit. But I, as an engineer, wasn't thinking about security when I designed it, which might make adhering to some of these security compliance issues more difficult because I wasn't thinking about it. And now we have to go back and rework all this code. But had I spoken to the security people, had I spoken to the QA people and had them involved in the designing of the particular feature or product, then this would be a much smoother path all the way into production. By shifting left the responsibility of security, auditing, tracing, telemetry, quality, all that stuff needs to be thought about at time zero when you're designing the feature, not trying to bolt it on after you've done that. And then finally, infrastructure as code. Your infrastructure needs to be this flexible resource that you can spin up and throw away when you no longer need it. And the way to get infrastructure that's flexible is to use a concept called infrastructure as code. Infrastructure as code is where you take the desired endpoint of your infrastructure and you codify it in some form, be it a bicep file, an ARM template, a Terraform file, and it says, this is what I declare my infrastructure should look like. And it's in source control, so it can be monitored, it can be during a pull request, it can be reviewed, it can be tested through deployments, and that knowledge is no longer trapped in one engineer's head, who is the only person who knows how to go into the portal and configure that environment. That information and that knowledge is now stored in source control, where everyone can read it, everyone can learn from it, and everyone can act upon it. All I have to do to deploy something new to Azure is to update my infrastructure's code and run my pipeline. And the pipeline runs, deploys the infrastructure, and now I can deploy my code into it as well. It also helps you with disaster recovery. When your infrastructure is completely defined in a file and not in someone's head, and it's automated the way you deploy it, if an entire region goes down, you spinning up a new region is just a deployment. You say, hey, I'm going to change this variable from region X to region Y, and watch, our pipeline is going to go out there and deploy everything for us, and we'll be back up in a matter of minutes. Historically, that was everyone, all hands on deck, everyone come to the war room, I'm ordering in takeout, and we're going to stay here till we figure this out. It was miserable. But now it's everyone go back to sleep. I've already pushed the button we need to push. Our infrastructure will be deployed here in just a second, and we'll be right back up and running. Being able to destroy or actually stand up an environment really quickly allows you to destroy them just as quickly. So a dev environment that you only need for a short period of time can be spun up, used, and then destroyed, saving you lots of money. Same with your QA environment. You can stand up your QA environment, use it for integration testing, for manual exploratory testing, and then destroy that environment when you no longer need it, and then deploy into production, which you stay up all the time. And that infrastructure as code is what actually allows you to do that. So infrastructure as code is something that I was late to as a developer, because being a developer, coming from the era of development that I did, I was deploying to actual physical software. This is before virtual machines. This was a physical server, and it didn't change very often. So the concept of infrastructure as code really didn't dawn on me. It didn't seem important. But as you move to the cloud, and you can, at a moment's notice, have whatever infrastructure that you want and then tear it back down, infrastructure as code becomes really, really important and a very, very powerful concept. So what I want to do before we get to the Q&A here in the last 10 to 12 minutes is talk about some of the resources that I would encourage you to do, or books I would encourage you to read. The Phoenix Project is a fantastic book. It is sort of like everyone needs to read it if you're going to be doing anything inside of DevOps. I'm not a big fan of just reading for fun. I only read books that make me smarter. That's a novel that I couldn't put down, because it's talking about DevOps the entire book. And what's really funny is how they describe these people's characteristics, and those people, you know those people. Their names are different, but you know that person. And sometimes you recognize yourself in the people that they're describing in that book. That made the book really, really fun to read. And it gives you all the major concepts of how to think about delivering value on a continuous basis, reducing waste, and how you're going to go ahead and apply some of these things inside of your own organization. Follow up for that is the Unicorn Project. And then one of the classics is Continuous Delivery by Jez Humble. This was a book that really talks about continuous integration, continuous delivery, why you would do it, and some of the best practices you're going to want to employ when you're out there implementing this for yourself. So I highly encourage those books when it comes to implementing DevOps and that transformation in your organization. And at that point, I think we can go back to some Q&A here, and we can use the last 14 minutes to just answer any questions you might still have.
Okay, thank you so much for that. I just can't believe how fast that period when you were talking about DevOps has moved past us. I mean, I was just fascinated by everything and all that you can achieve by using DevOps. So I see we have a few questions on the chat. In case you guys have more, just continue posting them. So Lydia is asking, how much do you usually practice before going on stage?
Oh man, that is a lot. It's not an exaggeration. I pace around in the shower with the words that I'm going to say. I write them down and I study them to figure out if I'm using more words than I need to, if I could be more concise, if I'm just rambling or not. And then I say them over and over and over again until I can't get them wrong, till it just feels natural. Because when you get on stage, a lot of people say, why are you never nervous on stage? They've seen me on stage like, man, you look so comfortable on stage. You don't look nervous at all. I'm like, why would I be nervous? I've said these hundreds of times, and that's not an exaggeration. I have said this hundreds of times. So when I'm on stage, it's my opportunity to perform. It's my opportunity to let you see all that work that I've put into it. Same thing with the demo. If you've ever seen me pacing backstage, you'll see my hand moving. Like that's me moving the virtual mouse that I know I'm going to have when I'm on stage. You'll see me typing even though there's no keyboard in front of me, because I know what keyboard commands I need to type at that particular point of the demo, what I intend to see on the screen, when I'm going to stop and turn around and point at the screen so I draw the audience focuses away from me into the feature that I'm actually wanting them to see on the screen. All that stuff is thought out. Think about it like you're going to be on Broadway. If you were going to be on Broadway as an actor, you wouldn't just practice it a couple times and then run on stage and think you're going to get that right. You would rehearse over and over and over again until it just felt natural to say the things that you say. And that's what I do. And when I say hundreds of times, that's not an exaggeration. I start months before I get on stage at Build, months before I get on stage at Ignite. When you're being asked to represent Microsoft, one of the most historic companies of my lifetime, like you have to take that serious. You got to put in the time. You can't just assume, oh, it's my right, it'll be fine. The demo, I saw the demo work once or twice. I'm sure it'll be fine on stage. No, it won't. And then when you crash and burn on stage, that could also be a career-defining moment. If you get on stage and you do really, really well, that could define the new trajectory for your career. If you get on stage and do really, really badly, you may never get that opportunity again. So when that opportunity presents itself, take it serious. And literally, what's the saying? You don't rehearse until you get it right. You rehearse until you can't get it wrong. And that's exactly the model that I drive by when I'm trying to get ready for one of these big presentations where I'm going to be on stage in front of 23,000 people, and I want to make sure that they have the best experience that they have. You just rehearse until you can't get it wrong, until it's just natural. To when you get on stage, you're so excited to be on stage because you finally get to show everyone what you've been what you've been practicing, and you know it's going to work. I know the demo is going to work because the demo's worked 100 times in a row. And then the off chance that it does, and this is another thing that's really interesting about practicing a demo 100 times, 200 times, you'll see it fail. You'll see it fail a lot, right? You'll see it fail in every possible way, because when you do a demo, the end state of your demo has certain values and files and things in certain places that you have to remember to go clean up. And when you clean them up, you start over again. All right, let's do it again. Clean everything up, let's do it again. And then all of a sudden it'll fail once. Why? Oh, man, I forgot to delete that file. Okay, let me go delete that file, clean everything up. Oh, fell again. Okay, I forgot to delete that file, or I forgot to delete that thing out of the registry. And what's really cool is that your checklist of all the things that you have to do to make sure that the demo is going to work, I put that in a list, and I usually script it. So I'll have a PowerShell script that I can run that will go and reset my entire environment for me. But what's really nice about that is if for whatever reason during rehearsals we forgot to delete a file or we forgot to delete an environment variable, I've seen that failure. I recognize it on the screen. And here I am in front of 23,000 people and it messes up. And instead of me freaking out and just aborting the demo, I'll say, oh man, I know exactly what I did. Let me explain to you why that failed. And what that does is it convinces the people that were watching that, man, this person understands what's going on. They're not just doing a script. They actually understand this technology because they're able to go and troubleshoot a demo right there on stage. You practice it till you can't get it wrong. So the answer is a lot. I've broken parts of Azure because I built more service principles than anyone had ever built before. Because I had rehearsed the same demo so many times, I found out that there's quotas that are out there that are in the thousands that I had no idea that I was ever going to reach, that no one thought I was ever going to reach. And when I put in a service ticket, they were like, I have to go into the back door of the database and delete these things for Donovan because we never thought anyone would create that many of those particular items. So that's how much I rehearse, a lot.
Awesome. So Agnes is asking, can anyone with a non-technical background learn and be good on DevOps? So I think we can combine that with Mary's question. She's asking, do you need to be good at programming to venture into DevOps?
Oh, good question. So do you have to be good at programming to transition to DevOps? I would say no, because DevOps is really more about the process, the people, and the products coming together. You don't actually have to write software to help people who do write software get their code into production. So no, if writing software really doesn't excite you, but the process of getting code from the developer into the hands of your users does, DevOps is still a good place for you to go off and look into. If I wasn't a developer by trade, I probably wouldn't have written code for a long time at my time at Microsoft because it wasn't asked of me. Because I am a developer, I would find ways to write software, automate building pipelines because it's just the way that I think, but it was definitely not a requirement. So SLO, so if you look at SREs, which are kind of like, in my opinion, the ops side of the DevOps story that are very integrated, they code when they write scripts, but they're not what we would say a traditional developer like a C# programmer or a C++ programmer, but they do write scripts and things like that to automate some of the processes, but they're all on the operations side of the DevOps spectrum. So you can fit anywhere in that spectrum you want, but I do not believe that you have to be a hardcore developer to go into the field of DevOps and be very effective in helping those hardcore developers get their code running successfully in production. Okay,
perfect. So we have Festus asking, are the recommended books beginner friendly, or you can recommend others that are suited for those starting out in DevOps?
The books I recommended are the ones that I would tell you to go start with when it comes to getting into DevOps. The Phoenix Project, I think, is a must read, and I think Continuous Delivery, again, is a must read. Those two books, when you're wanting to get into the idea of why is continuous integration so important? Why is continuous deployment so important? What are the goals that we're trying to get out of these best practices? Don't just do them to do them. Understand what the value is for this particular practice. Because I get very frustrated when people tell me, I ask them, so why are we doing, oh, it's a best practice. I'm like, no, don't tell me it's a best practice. Explain to me why this is a best practice. Don't just tell me it's a best practice because you heard someone else say it was a best practice. If you don't understand why we're doing this, to me, that's a problem. So what I want you to be able to do is understand everything that we're talking about and be able to share that information with someone else. And those books that I shared before will help you understand why do continuous integration, why do continuous delivery, why is infrastructure as code really important. And when you internalize that information, you'll then be able to share it and then see the flaws that other people are making. because they might be doing continuous integration but not running unit tests during their continuous integration. That's weird, right? Or they might have a branching strategy that is counterproductive on what it is that they're trying to achieve. But you reading those books and understanding branching strategies, understanding those different best practices, and not just understanding them, but why they exist and what problems they're solving, I think are going to serve you really well in your DevOps journey.
Awesome. So we have another question from Agnes, and she's asking, is DataOps similar to DevOps?
Okay, so you're about to push a button for me, right? There's DataOps, MLOps, GitOps, BizOps. Oh my God, I'm so sick of the ops. I'm so tired of everyone dropping the word ops at the end of something and making it sound like that's their own new discipline. I think there should only ever be DevOps. It's about taking data, taking the software and getting into the hands of your production. If you're doing an ML model, that's still software needing to get into the hands of your end users. If you're doing a database design, that's still schema and data changes that need to get into the hands of your users. To me, there doesn't need to be an ops added to everything. Those things, business analysis, infrastructure as code, security, all that stuff needs to be in the exact same pipeline. Right? I don't need to have a pipeline that just deploys my database, and another pipeline that just deploys my front end, and another pipeline that just does security, and another pipeline that just does ML ops. No, it's a solution. And for my solution to work, I have to deploy all of that stuff. So why am I going to have a dozen pipelines that are just basically their own silos, and we're supposed to be tearing those silos down? So when I'm looking to deploy something out into production, I'm looking at deploying the entire solution. And I use as few pipelines as required to be able to say, every time I make a change, I want to deploy this entire solution, the ML models, the database changes, the infrastructure, the applications, the microservices, the Kubernetes cluster, everything. I want the mobile application, which is another one, mobile ops. Like, no, you don't need that stuff. What you need is to understand the real reasoning behind DevOps at all, which is delivering value. And how do I deliver value? By automating as much as I possibly can, breaking down silos, and using a process to guide my people. That is fundamentally what it's about. So call it whatever ops you want to call it, all boils down to it's about delivering value continuously to your end user. So you can apply it to anything that you need to, but I'm so exhausted with all the ops that pop up every day because I hadn't even heard that one yet, right? And by the time I finish this sentence, there'll be another ops out there that someone's trying to make themselves. I don't know what they're doing with all the ops. I just don't understand it. But to me, it all boils down to delivering value, full stop.
Okay, that's amazing. So I see we only have 5 more minutes for this call.
Okay.
So I have one final question for you. For a team looking to implement DevOps, what are the challenges that you can talk about that they might face while trying to implement DevOps?
Oh, that's a great question. So one of the first things that teams do when they want to implement DevOps is they think, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to stop and we're going to go figure out DevOps. And then we're going to come back and we're going to implement this perfect pipeline. And it never works because you don't know what you don't know. And for the time that you were off investigating what DevOps was and how to build this a beautiful, perfect pipeline from beginning to end, you weren't delivering value. So your stakeholders are upset because you didn't deliver value for the last sprint. Your product owners are going to be upset because you didn't deliver value over the last sprint. And then when you set up your pipeline and it doesn't work, and then you continuously don't deliver value because your pipeline's broken, you're never going to be given the opportunity to go do that kind of research again because it didn't yield any value at all. So what I would encourage teams to do that want to implement DevOps is evaluate your current process. And everyone has one. If you've ever shipped software, even if it was a completely manual process, you have a process that delivers software from your developers into the hands of your end users. Look at that process and say, which part of this process is the most risky, the most expensive, the most painful that we have to go through? And I would focus on that one area. Don't go try to do CI and CD and a new branching strategy and infrastructure as code all at once. What I would do is if you do not have a source control system right now, that's where I would start. If you're still zipping up files and emailing them to each other or putting them on a file share, stop doing that immediately. But you don't have to go do a complete CI/CD. You just need to get source control in place. Once you get source control in place and the entire team is collaborating and using the same source control system, then I would say, how can we start using continuous integration? How can we start building that code every single time a developer commits to that particular repository? How can we start adding unit tests to that to make sure that the quality is high? Now that we're producing these packages that are shippable, how do we start doing some continuous delivery? But don't try to do it all at once. That is a recipe for disaster. Pick something that hurts, fix that one thing, and when you fix it, you can step back and say, okay, now that we fixed that painful thing, what's the most painful thing left? And then go attack that particular item and spend some time, 15, 20 minutes a day if you need to, 20 minutes a week, whatever you can spare while you're still delivering value like you were before. So this needs to be an investment that you're constantly making. And another reason I like to do it this way is that you should never stop investing in this. No matter how efficient your pipeline is, you should always be spending time figuring out how can we make it go faster next time. If you think you just go off for a month, create DevOps, and then put it in place and you never think about it again, you're still doing it wrong. DevOps is a journey that you get on that you never get off, because every day you're trying to figure out how I can go faster than I did the day before. So my best advice for a team that's trying to get started with DevOps is don't go try to do everything at once. Pick the thing that hurts the most and fix that. Final bit, do not ask for permission to go do this. This is your job. You don't have to go, can we please go have a new source control? Can we please go do source continuous integration? Can we go please do? No, that is your job. So don't waste time trying to convince those who don't understand what continuous integration is that you should be doing it. Just go start doing continuous integration. Don't try to go convince people who don't understand what infrastructure code is, Just let your results speak for themselves. So don't ask for permission, just do the right thing and don't do it all at once.
Perfect. So we only have a minute left, and on this call we have students, we have recent graduates, we have people diving into their industries. So what will be your final words to this audience?
Just find what you're passionate about. I can't stress that enough. You always hear the saying, do what you love and you never work a day in your life. It's been true for me. I adore what I do. I would happily do what I do for free. And what's so ironic is I get paid really well to do it, even though I would happily do it for free. I think the reason why is because it shows in my work. It shows in the fact that I'm willing to put in that extra polish. I'm trying to make sure the code looks perfect. It's commented well. I take a lot of pride in what it is that I show to the world, especially in an open source community where you want your pull request to go through with a little friction. You want your code to be this shining example of this is what good code looks like. And if you have that passion behind what you do, the sky's the limit. Amazing.
So that was really informative. The session was just amazing. Thank you so much. We're really happy to have you.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Yes.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much. So